Hey guys, welcome back to the final part in my main series of how 4Kids changed the English dub of Sonic X. It's been a long wait to get this part out, and I do apologize for that. But the Metarex Saga is literally the longest arc in Sonic X, clocking in at a whopping 26 episodes. And considering that the production was made by 4Kids, who notoriously over-edits their franchises, I wasn't super looking forward to this one. But it's done now. If you're unfamiliar with this series, it's the 8th part in a comprehensive look at all the changes 4Kids made to Sonic X. I suggest you check out the other 7 parts of the series first, as they provide foundational context to some of the changes that 4Kids made. With that out of the way, let's get looking at how 4Kids changed the English dub of Sonic X, Part 8, the Metarex Saga. Episode 53 has been retitled from The Messenger from a Meteor Shower to A Cosmic Call. When Tails, Cream, Cheese, and Amy are stargazing, this shot of a shooting star is removed. A shot of Cosmo's ship crashing is removed. Then, a shot of a meteor shower dissolving into Cosmo passed out is removed. When everyone is asking Cosmo who she is and where she came from, the dub removes some reaction shots of everyone as they ask her some questions. Namely, Amy being a bit too confrontational and Cream trying to stop her, and Tails asking Cosmo more questions. The close-up of the Master Emerald before reintroducing Knuckles is removed. And lastly, for the first and only time in the dub, the plate stating Thorndike Institute of Technology is left alone. Considering it was removed every time it was shown in the last arc, I grant this the inconsistency stamp. Episode 54 has been retitled from The Spaceship Blue Typhoon to A Cosmic Crisis. In another inconsistency, the house of Cream's mom, Text, is left alone in this establishing shot of her home. This was previously removed. The first change is Chris looking at himself in the mirror as he remarks on having de-aged. Chris explaining to Amy and Tails that he used to be a teenager before he reverted back to his child body and then freaking out is removed. Cosmo explaining some details about planet eggs is removed, and then the scene of Sonic talking to her is mirrored for some reason. It's pretty odd stuff. And for the first time in this series, Rouge's boobs are censored in the English dub. It's pretty odd that it's only happening now considering she was in the majority of the previous episodes, but here it is. Expect this to be an inconsistent change on how 4Kids handled it moving forward, so I'll definitely be bringing this up every time it happens. Episode 55 has been retitled from The Water Planet Hido to H2O. The first change is that Mr. Thorndike no longer bows in the dub. Instead, extra lip flaps are added to keep the scene the same length. The exterior of the ship in space is removed. The Cosmonavi text is removed on the magazine that Sonic is reading. The dub also cuts out the zoom in and actual contents of the magazine inside. This cute scene of Sonic imagining himself running through the planets in the guide is also removed. Sonic tying his shoes? At least that's what it looks like. After jumping down is removed. Then another exterior of the ship in motion is removed. Text is again removed on Sonic's planet guide, which is a funny concept. I mean, a planet guide. And then the scene with contemplative Chris has a few changes. The dub cuts out the long scene of him showering and instead uses Chris in bed to get into his thoughts. When he remembers his life on Earth, the text is removed on the menu and his hat when he remembers working at Waku McDonald's. Then text is once again scrapped from the cafe that showed up in the previous arc. And in his notes to his friends, the English words energy, distance, speed up, and friction are all removed. But the calculus is all kept because math is universal. And the last change of the episode is the last shot. As Sonic runs through the planet, the freeze frame is removed. Episode 56 has been retitled from Dr. Eggman Joins the War to An Enemy in Need. As the cast is being thrown into the air in celebration, the dub removes everyone but Chris and Sonic in the air. Then, Rouge's cleavage is censored once again. Bokun following Eggman and accidentally sabotaging his plans is removed. Then we get the usual flashback border when Eggman appeals to Knuckles' sense of ignorance, although some of the later shots in the flashback are also recolored for some reason. That's definitely different, and the only time 4Kids will do this. The split screen border inside Eggman's ship is made thicker when it shows Eggman, Deco, and Boko. The Metarex giving exposition is removed in this shot. Cosmo crying "please stop it" has her animation removed in place of reusing her looking forward instead of looking sad. And the last change of the episode is that the lock-on text is removed right when Chris is about to fire at the Metarex. Episode 57 has been retitled from The Battle on the Ice Palace to A Chilling Discovery. Tails commenting that he's the captain, therefore he is supposed to be giving the orders when Amy steals his thunder is removed. Cream consoling Cheese that Tails can land safely is removed. Tails being insecure when he tries to fix part of the ship after everything goes wrong is also removed. And the last change of the episode is that Eggman and the bots drinking milk and rice cakes as their roofied is removed. Bokun and Rouge do this, but the aftermath of them passed out is kept, and the act is still mentioned throughout the rest of the episode. Episode 58 has been retitled from The Maiden's Jungle Trap to Desperately Seeking Sonic. The first change is that the dub removes the recap of what instigated their adventure into space. Then, offline text is removed on the ship's monitor that Chris uses to communicate with Tails. A flashback border, a pretty large one actually, is added to Cosmo's flashback. The dub borders aren't usually this big, and they're usually much more opaque so you can see more of the screen corners, so I think this might be an editing mistake. And the last change of the episode is that the monkey Metarex being egged on by Amy is removed. Episode 59 has been retitled from The Chaotix Go Into Space to Galactic Gumshoes. The first change is that the Thorndike Science and Technology text is removed in the first pan. Then we have many text changes on the Chaotix Detective Office that we need to talk about. First, all of the text is scrubbed when it is first introduced in this saga. Keep this in mind. Then, inside the ship, the green sign and text on the top of the door is removed. Then in this shot, the text and sign are left alone. Let's give it an inconsistency. You know the drill. Then later on, with Charmy, the sign and text is removed again. Then the text is removed again on this zoom of the detective office. And on the interior, the sign is left alone. But the text is removed in two different shots. In this shot, the text is kept on the Chaotix ship. Keep that in mind as well, as this is the first time we really see it. Then the text is removed again inside. And then the detective office banner and text is removed in 5 shots. That's an inconsistency considering it was left alone before. Then the house loses its text again, and the green text behind Team Chaotix is removed in every other shot. Okay, that's just the text changes. Pretty wild, right? Some inconsistencies, some normal stuff, and some things that will get inconsistencies in later episodes. But let's get into the removals of episode 59. When Charmy is beat up by the cast, the shot of him running back to the ship in tears is removed. The shot of Team Chaotix walking to the cast's ship is also removed, as is Vector's fantasy of what Cream's mom actually told him. Vector's imaginary scenario of a similar idea is also removed, as he recalls a situation that never happened. Cosmo's flashback in black and white about how she ended up with Cream in Vector's ship is removed. A long exposition between Sonic and the Chaotix is also removed. Espio taking out his kunai and threatening to shank Sonic is removed. Chris telling the Chaotix that he misses home but he needs to help is removed. Then the text "The House of Cream's Mom" is removed on the exterior of their home. This is an inconsistency of an inconsistency considering it's been handled pretty oddly. And the last change is that the keep out text and that random text on the warning sign on the left are removed in Eggman's ship. Episode 60 has been retitled from Shadow Rebirth to Trixan. The first change is that the keep out text is once again removed, only this time you can kind of see the text between Eggman's legs in the next shot. Sonic getting scared as Knuckles picks on him in the bridge is removed. Eggman coming up with a plan with Bokun is removed. And the last 2 changes are that Rouge's breast lines are removed in 2 different shots to make them look a little smaller, but we all know what they really are. Episode 61 has been retitled from Metarex Battleship Attacks to Ship of Doom. The first change is that the recaps between the 2 versions differ in content. The dub's recap sits at 30 seconds, while the Japanese versions is nearly 3 minutes long. It was definitely necessary to trim it, in my opinion. Cosmo's flashback not only gets a flashback border, but it also changes the footage from her traumatizing past to thinking about Shadow. The dialogue changes accompany the flashback changes. Her horrified reaction is also removed. Then, another flashback border is added to the footage of Shadow. Eggman talking smack to Knuckles is largely the same in both versions, but the dub adds lip flaps and gets rid of Eggman doing this ridiculous thing with his hands that reminds me of Diavolo from Golden Wind. Later on, Cosmo's original flashback is now left alone, but the flashback border is added to it. Chris gulping from stress is removed, but the dub extends the footage so that it still lasts roughly the same amount of time, and the last change is that Eggman's flashback gains a border. Episode 62 has been retitled from The Secret of the Underground Valley to An Underground Odyssey. The first change is that Cosmo's origin is given a flashback border. This opens the episode and runs for about 4 minutes. The Japanese version is only implied to be a flashback, while the dub outright conveys that with the border. Chris thinking about Shadow is removed, and Cream's dialogue is changed to be about Knuckles instead. Cosmo's flashback and guilt for putting everyone in danger is removed. It's a pretty lengthy flashback, but they are also the easiest footage to remove if need be. Cosmo feeling guilty and being talked down from her intense feelings by Tails is removed, as well as the whole romantic connotation and their meaningful conversation. The now loading text on Tails' scanner is removed. And the last change of the episode is that Tails' flashback gets the border. Episode 63 has been retitled from Space Fortress Metal Plant to Station Break-In. The first change is that Rouge is removed from Eggman's exposition scene for some baffling reason. Maybe it's an animation error that was fixed. She is in the scene right after, in both versions, but this shot without Rouge shows up nowhere else in this saga, so I'm inclined to believe that 4Kids removed Rouge for literally no reason. There's no reason for this. Eggman throwing a rock at the planets and it getting blasted to oblivion as they try to come up with a plan is removed. Eggman content with coming up with a plan is also removed. Rouge realizing Eggman's plan is also removed. Chris giving Shadow his rings and a short version of Shadow's flashback is removed. A flashback border is added after Shadow supposedly died in the Project Shadow Saga flashback. The Do Not Enter text is removed from the spaceport in this shot, and the last change is that Sonic's flashback gains a border when he fought with Dark Oak. Episode 64 has been retitled from Clash Sonic vs. Shadow to a Metarex Melee. The first change is that the recap differs between the two versions. The dub removes a minute of the extended Japanese recap. Missiles being launched against the cast's ship and then failing to penetrate the shield is removed. Eggman's robots wondering if Chris has defected and joined their side is removed. Bokun calling Chris a thief is removed. These Metarex minions activating and charging at Sonic is removed. Here's a fun inconsistency. If you watch the Project Shadow episodes, Shadow pushing Chris away is implied but never shown in the dub. In the flashback, it's finally shown, in context that Shadow pushed Chris away. This is an inconsistency, as the dub previously went out of its way to not show this. Additionally, a flashback border is added, because of course it is. And the last change is that Tails stating that he must survive is removed. Episode 65 is retitled from the Chaotix's incredibly shocking lovey-dovey operation to Mission Matchup. The first change is that this bizarre pan showing Cosmo as Chris and Tails talk is removed. The monitor turning off during Metarex Commander talk is removed. The usual changes are also done to Team Chaotix's ship, although in this shot you can kind of make out some of the letters. Vector commenting on Tails' game and trying to pick up on Cosmo is removed, as well as Vector coming up with a plan to make Cosmo fall in love with Tails. It's a different kind of animation style, and uses very Japanese aesthetic choices, so it's not hard to see why 4Kids got rid of this. Eggman's robots talking about being characters in the show as Bokun runs around has a dialogue change in this scene. A flashback border is also added to Vector's hypothetical scenario where Tails and Cosmo fall in love. Vector's other hypothetical scenario with Tails in a suit and Cosmo in a dress is also removed. And the last change is that the Vector text is removed on his handkerchief, but Tails still reads it like it's there. I think that perfectly sums up 4Kids in a nutshell. Episode 66 has been retitled from Cross the Galaxy Corridor to Clash in the Cloister. The first change is that Sonic trolling Knuckles by telling him he has something on his face is removed. Cream wondering if they could survive going into a black hole is removed in this minute-long removal. The dub cuts out this pan of the cast, and this shot of the ship repositioning itself. This pan and Cream counting down from 10 is removed, although the dub keeps everything from 4 and onward. As the cast turns into a dolly painting, Tails trying to explain something to Chris by taking out a paper that reads Super Ultra Mega Wave Motion Propulsive Engine is removed, as is Chris understanding the message and knowing what to do. I don't know about you guys, but that's pretty funny. Tails and Cosmo talking and Cream imagining a hypothetical scenario for getting them unstuck is removed. And the last change is that yellow Zelkova eating curry before charging at the cast is removed. Episode 67 has been retitled from Black Trap to Teasing Time / Testing Time. The dub removes the entire first minute as the cast tries to discover what the Metarex are trying to accomplish. Then Dark Oak's exposition and a few establishing shots are removed. Amy's reaction is removed here, as well as this pan of Sonic. Cheese hanging out with Sonic and getting some words in is removed. The impact of Chris getting attacked by Black Narcissus is removed. It does kind of look like blood, so I imagine that's why it might have been done, but it's just scraps of Chris's helmet. The cast talking about saving Chris and Cosmo is removed. And Sonic talking to Black Narcissus removes the shot of his shoes and legs, despite the scene running the same length of time. Episode 68 has been retitled from Upon a Destroyed Planet to A Revolutionary Tale. The dub removes some shots of the asteroids as Eggman's ship flies through them. Then the entire scene of Rouge drinking in the bathtub is removed. The Eggbots commenting on how cute the rebellion leader is removed. Shots of the rebellion, which are technically a flashback, are removed. The Black Wind flashback also has a flashback border added to it. Rouge's cleavage is completely censored by expanding her breastplate in this shot. Eggman's plan to join the resistance is longer in the Japanese version as the dub removes various reaction shots of the three robots. In this shot, Rouge's side boob is altered to not look so ridiculously huge, and then her cleavage is altered again once she comes down, followed by more boob alterations, despite the fact that the dub leaves them uncut right after. Then a few more cleavage changes. And next up, we have one of the biggest changes in Sonic X. I'm serious. Molly's death is changed to her leaving. First, the dub removes Rouge pleading with her to just flee. Then the dub adds this shot of Molly flying past Shadow that happens just a few seconds later in the Japanese version. Molly getting ready to fly off and flying straight into the Metarex in the Japanese version, getting her ship obliterated and losing her life in the process is all cut out. It's a pretty rough scene considering that it shows the consequences of war and rebellion in as great details as a series like Sonic X could. The dub, however, removes all of this, and instead implies that Molly flew away and left forever, never to be seen again. This is Arlong locking Belmare in the dungeon levels of ridiculous, but it's pretty obvious that having a secondary character killed on screen would have really not been cool to air. Roughly a minute of footage is cut out and reworked to change Molly's death into her leaving forever. It works for what it is, but it leaves everything off on an anticlimactic note. Rouge sad at the state of affairs is also removed at nearly the end of the scene. Then all of the shots of Molly's grave is removed. If direct shots aren't removed, then the grave is completely edited out so it's not in the footage at all. Shadow's flashback of Maria is also removed, which is fitting since neither character died in the dub. Rouge's cleavage is censored in this final shot of her in this episode as well, but it should be noted that there is an inconsistency in this shot as the tomb is noticeable in the dub. You know the drill. But this is the state of affairs for what happened to Molly in the dub. Episode 69 has been retitled from Please Marmalim to The Planet of Misfortune. Once again, the Thorndike Science and Technology text is removed. Here, the coordinate markers are removed on the map. The close-up of the orange alien is removed. Then a full minute of their origin and why they need help is removed. It's a long scene explaining their world and even their government. It's world building, so of course it was going to be removed. The Star of David is removed from the crystal ball in this shot, and behind Cosmo and Amy in this shot. In the Amy shot, a star is also removed, largely considered a satanic symbol, even though variants of that star is left alone in the dub. Here, the flashback in the dub uses a slightly modified version that shows Sonic patting an alien on the head instead of the pen used in the Japanese version. Then in this shot, the Star of David and the star are removed. And the final change is a multi-step one. When Amy gets heated, the dub adds a few seconds of the close-up of her on fire. Then it removed a medium shot of Amy cooling down, and that leads into the conversation with Tails and the crew, where they find out that the planet has a form of cancer cells that are destroying it from the inside. The dub removes a 75-second scene. Pretty rough stuff. I guess 4Kids decided somewhere along the way that context wasn't needed in this episode. The last thing isn't a change, it's an observation, is that the dub leaves the Star of David uncensored in this one shot. Inconsistency. Episode 70 has been retitled from The Eggman Fleet Appears to Terror on the Typhoon. The first change is that the dub removes the first 50 seconds of this episode, which, you know, shows why the crew is warping through space. I guess context really wasn't needed in this episode either. And the second change comes from the same flock. Chris trying to figure out where an enemy ship warped to is removed, and Knuckles freaking out over the Master Emerald. This is a 90-second long scene. Deco and Boko wondering if Eggman is depressed because Shadow ditched them is also removed. Then the dub adds an extended shot of Eggman zipping around. And the final change is the removal of Cosmo wondering if they'll be fine, and Tails telling her to have faith in Sonic. Episode 71 has been retitled from Cafe Chaotix to Hedgehog Hunt. The first change is that the dub adds a 30-second recap of the previous episodes. Then the Metarex news conference is cut, and Eggman drinking with them is removed in a nearly 2-minute removal. Zelkova eating curry is also removed in this episode, which is odd because that's not entirely offensive. Call it something other than curry if need be, but the footage was never shown in the 4Kids dub. Eggman's flashback to defeating Black Narcissus is removed, as is Eggman contemplating what to do after the flashback, as he quite literally says, "Que será, será," which is Spanish for, whatever, fuck off. Next up, we have a host of changes that occur inside the Chaotix house, which has now been retitled Cafe Chaotix, and the text is actually kept in the dub. Detective Office is still removed, however. Inside the bar, all of the empty drinks have been colored to add non-alcoholic coloring to the mugs. Then, every time the wine glasses, which are also called stem glasses for the drink snobs out there, are shown, they are removed from the dub. And 2 flashbacks regarding the Chaotixes also gain the ever-famous flashback border. Vector's piano playing is also different across the versions. Text is removed on the exterior of the store that Vector goes to, and on the groceries list that Vector looks over. When Boko tries to find Sonic, the dub removes Boko coming back a few times to try to catch him. Later on, the exterior of Cafe Chaotix loses the detective office text again, but this time the closed sign has been localized into the more grammatically correct closed. If 4Kids had this in their arsenal at all times, why not use it? Then the green text is removed inside their ship again, and the stem and martini glasses are removed in these shots with Eggman. The bottle that Vector serves Eggman alcohol in is also recolored to orange. And I just noticed, but the label on the bottle on the highest shelf of the well is also removed. Obviously, the alcohol is not referred to as alcohol in the dub, it's called juice. Vector's ship flying away is also removed, as is the background of what appears to be Chris and Tails' ship exploding. However, the dub replaces it with a different explosion. It's the same connotation, but the footage was slightly reworked. Then, back at the Cafe Chaotix, the stem and martini glasses are again removed, and the song Vector plays on the piano is once again different. The only other major change this time is that the bottle that SBO serves Eggman liquor in has the Japanese kanji removed. SBO also verbally calls it prune juice instead of alcohol in the dub. Episode 72 has been retitled from The True Form of the Metarex to Zelkova Strikes Back. The very first scene of the episode is completely scrapped. It's about Shadow and Rouge in a bar called Stardust, which I'm sure is a reference from Sonic CD. Shadow investigates and asks the bartender for information, while Rouge has a drink and is looking very voluptuous. This is a nearly 90-second removal. Back with the main cast, exposition inside the ship is removed. Then Knuckles prepping the Master Emerald is removed. Cream worried and prepping for launch is removed. And 2 of the Metarexes wondering what happened to Zelkova is also removed. Cream walking through a hypothetical graveyard is removed, and even an insert song is cut out of the dub. Zelkova being silly and yelling before getting into serious mode is also removed. And the last change of the episode is a pretty large one. Zelkova, after losing the Metarex armor, falling into lava and Knuckles trying to rescue him, is completely cut out. This moment is eerily reminiscent of the Sonic OVA, when Sonic does nearly the same thing to Metal Sonic. The dub still implies the death and him falling into lava, but it doesn't show it. It's a nearly 50-second long removal. Episode 73 has been retitled from Shadow the Assassin to The Cosmo Conspiracy. First is that the scene of Shadow collapsing from exhaustion is removed. Then the scene where Knuckles reawakens plays out a bit differently. First, the dub adds this shot of Cream trying to reach out to Tails, and cuts out the first few seconds of Knuckles reawakening. Knuckles asks Rouge what is going on, which leads into the flashback of Leon stuck in the tree and dying. Then Shadow and Rouge see the same things on other planets. In the dub, this is changed to Knuckles just waking up and asking Rouge. It's a nearly 2-minute long scene removal, but the dub still keeps the connotation of what happens. And the last change is that a flashback border is added to Cosmo's flashback. The Japanese version already had one for the first part, but the dub extends it for the entire flashback. Episode 74 has been retitled from Lost Planet to I Spy. The first change is that the dub removes a recap of the previous episode, and the aerial shot of Chris waking up in pain, even though they're left alone just a bit later. You know how it goes. Cream cleaning Cosmo's room while she's getting her injuries tended is also removed, as is Knuckles' theory removed leading into the flashback with Zelkova, which is itself a 35-second cut. Then we see Rouge's boobs being censored, even though the very next shot leaves them alone, followed by more censoring. 4Kids, this production company, I swear. Cosmo's mother's hologram appearing loses the pan to Shadow on the tree in the dub, and just extends the footage of the hologram so that they take up roughly the same amount of time. Then a flashback border is added to the Metarex's origin story. Interestingly, in the Japanese version, when the Metarex transform to their mover mode, that's their dinosaur-looking form, it's stated that it kills them afterwards. In the dub, it just weakens them for some time. This episode is also pretty wild in that the dub not only keeps 2 mentions to death, verbally, but it also gets away with showing Lucas, also known as Dark Oak, bleeding. Blood. 4Kids can sometimes be very unpredictable. It's the little things that matter, folks. Knuckles and Rouge talking and comparing the Metarex to the Echidna tribe is also removed. During Tails' flashback, a few things are different. First, the usual flashback border is added. The dub also cuts out a few seconds of the middle of the scene, and then the dub removes the "Thank you everybody" text that was originally left alone as is. That last one, I of course grant the inconsistency stamp. It was all over the episode proper when it aired, but it became a problem a few episodes later. Okay, 4Kids, whatever, you win, you can do whatever you want. And the last change is that Sonic explaining how everyone will understand the situation soon as we see different shots of the cast is removed. Episode 75 has been retitled from The Day of the Forestation to Agent of Mischief. The first change is that the dub adds a recap to this episode. It's 31 seconds long, which is never a good sign. The Eggman TV timer loses its text in one shot, and then it's replaced by a much quicker countdown than the dub when it's shown again. You know the drill. Bokun's absurd flashback is also removed, and then the timer is changed again, this time to something that barely makes sense and is obviously missing a digit. Remember how I said an added recap is never a good sign? The crew seeing Shadow and planning their attack, which leads into a scene with Tails confronting Cosmo, and leading into another scene with Cosmo recapping certain events, is removed, in a nearly 2-minute long removal. There goes all the context for the episode. Here, the shot of the Metarex and their dialogue is removed. Then we get the usual chaotic text changes. First, the text on the green sign. Then when the house comes close to the frame, it's surprisingly missing the text in both versions. This is followed by the text removal on the side of the ship. Then this quick scene of Vector conversing with Espio is removed, as well as this other scene where Shadow walks away from them and they discuss a hypothetical situation. And the last change is this close-up of Rouge doing her screw kick attack is removed. Episode 76 has been retitled from Decisive Battle, Dark Oak to The Light in the Darkness. The first change is that the recaps are slightly different. The dub trims frames here and there, so it never quite matches up, and it's even a few seconds longer as it adds footage too. Missiles hitting the merged Metarex directly are removed, and that's because shortly after, the dub uses that footage in place of Shadow socking them in close combat. During Chris's flashback, the speed text on Sam's shirt is removed for the first time in the dubbed series. I grant this the inconsistency stamp. It was left alone in literally every episode it was previously in, but now it's a problem? Okay, sure, whatever, you win, 4Kids. Here's a pretty odd and quick one. The connect text on Chris's computer has much sharper and brighter text than the dub. When Sonic gets eaten by Dark Oak, Sonic running in a void while Dark Oak talks about the process of life and death, and Sonic fighting some weird creatures is removed. This is a 75-second cut of a very cool scene. Sonic giving the world and audience a thumbs up is removed, right before it gets grandiose, too. And the last change of the episode is that Rouge's boobs are censored. Don't know if you expected some sort of consistency, but it ain't here. Episode 77 has been retitled from What I Can Do For You to A Fearless Friend. The first change is that the dub adds a 31-second recap, so expect some major differences in this episode. In Cosmo's flashback to her mother, the dub adds the usual flashback border. Deco, Boko, and Bakun commenting on losing their energy despite being robots is removed. Cosmo climbing and remembering everyone is removed, and then her big flashback of her adventures with the crew is also gone. During Shadow's flashback, the footage is also different to convey his feelings towards Molly leaving as opposed to her dying in the Japanese version. And here comes the big removal. I promised you a clusterfuck, here it is. The cast talking about how Cosmo will die as they consult with Eggman and Chris in a genuinely touching scene is removed in the dub. It's a minute-long scene, and while not powerful, it does get all the right emotions in place for the big sad. Then, after Tails finds out that Cosmo is going to sacrifice herself, we get numerous changes. First is the removal of Tails' tears hitting the floor, as is this pan of Tails prepping to fire the cannon. The pan of the crew in quiet determination is gone, as are Rouge's boobs in this shot. Then the dub removes a 30-second scene of Tails having a breakdown as he realizes he can't fire the cannon. It's ultimately Eggman who consoles Tails and tells him that this must happen or they and the universe will die. It's a touching moment with Tails, and I love that the Japanese version skips music and lets you fall in love with the atmosphere. I really enjoy that it's always Eggman consoling the cast as well, as he doesn't always just play the rival role, but is also quite often the voice of reason and almost a father figure to his adversaries. When Tails sees Cosmo's figure, more of his crying as he preps the cannon is also removed. And the last change, and one of the largest changes in the series, is that the dub replaces some of the footage of Tails crying his foxy heart out with more flashback footage. The Japanese version uses a really moody insert song that touches on the dramatic elements of the situation. The dub cuts out Eggman's reaction and Tails is crying, but keeps the cannon and its deterioration. And at the very end, the scene of Cosmo growing is trimmed out a lot in the dub. The dub's last shot of Cosmo and the episode is as she says thank you to Tails, whereas the Japanese version has this brilliant moment of her telling Tails that she loves him and thanking him for helping her on her quest. It's a great scene that was absolutely butchered in the 4Kids version. She even fades away into nothingness into the original version, making it much more clear to the audience that she will never be seen again. Ah, c'est la vie. I'm not crying. You're crying. Episode 78, the last episode of the series, is retitled From the Place Where Planets Are Born to So Long Sonic. I'm not quite sure where to start with the final episode because just about every aspect of it is different. Footage is rearranged so often that the only footage that aligns with the Japanese version is the end of the episode. I guess I can end there, but let's get talking. The first change is that the dub adds a recap. It's a minute-long recap too. You know what that means. The scene that opens the Japanese version, where the Chaotix are eating with Cream's mom and commenting on how everything worked out, is also removed. It's a nearly 3-minute cut that builds on the future that the cast has created, before we see how it was created in the Japanese version. The scene with Amy and Cream taking food to the potluck is also completely removed, but the end of that scene is moved towards the end of the dubbed episode. These quick shots of Sonic overlooking a cliff and a plant that is there to remind us of Cosmo are kept, but are now at the end of the dubbed episode. The scene with Chris talking to Knuckles is moved from the first half of the Japanese episode to the second half of the dubbed episode. A pan of the sky to insinuate that time has passed is also removed during their conversation. Then, during Eggman's conversation with Rouge, text is removed on the room where Shadow once lied. As usual, also a quick shot of the beach is removed. Tails fixing the ship is removed, and narration of Peace is trimmed down tremendously. But shots of this are combined with footage from other episodes to create a quick transition in the dub from the Metarex fight to the post-adventure stuff. To give you guys some context of how much stuff was rearranged in this episode, the dub opens with the end of the Metarex fight. That's at the 9-minute mark of the original Japanese episode. Yeah. And here, just like with Sam's shirt, we get an inconsistent edit to something that was largely left alone beforehand. The egg text on Bokun's bag is removed for the first and only time in these two shots. I can't think of anything other than this and Sam's shirt being an inconsistency. Sonic remembering talking to Cosmo in the original Japanese version is changed to him speaking to the memories of Dark Oak. Does this imply that either of them is still alive and that it's to sanitize their death? It could be. And the last change of the episode and the series is all about Chris going home. First, the shot of the bots telling Chris that there's a chance he might keep his current size when he goes back home is removed. This is paired with them holding up a shirt and him feeling emotional. Then his feedback to Eggman and the Eggbots is removed. It's an emotional farewell, but they're also kind of telling him to fuck off, as anti-heroes and villains tend to do. Then the credits start playing. In the Japanese version, the credits play over the episode's ending. These are of course cut out of the dub. Also cut out are some of the still frames of the cast, as the dub's ending moves a few seconds faster. An insert song also plays over the ending, which makes the scene all the more engaging. And the last shot is trimmed down by a few seconds. Interestingly, an effect is added to Sonic's dash that leaves stars in its wake. This was not present in the original version. And that covers all the changes 4Kids made to the Metarex Saga of Sonic X. There's a lot of them, that much is undeniable. Just about every episode has changes to context, footage, dialogue, that sometimes barely leaves it in the realm of what it used to be. While I do believe that this is the worst localized Sonic X saga, I do think that the spirit of the original shines on in a few moments. Sure, Tails and Cosmo's dynamic is butchered to a large extent, but a lot of the Metarex's anger and the character arcs is left alone, enough that I get a sense that they aren't binary evil for the sake of being evil. Villains in the dub. And Mike Pollack shines as Dr. Eggman. He gives life to the character in a way that makes his dub performance always a joy to hear, even if sometimes the script can fall a bit flat. If you're going to watch one version, I would suggest watching the original Japanese version. It's got a whole hell of a lot more emotional dexterity, and has a lot more to say than simply following a children's version of the hero's journey. I find this series fascinating, and its localization all the more fascinating. I rarely found things that I would consider offensive in this series, and if I were the production company in charge of the localization, I would keep things one-to-one with the Japanese version. But we all know that's not how 4Kids operates. We all know that logic escapes them, and we all know they sanitize their series to make more money. So with that, I have one more video to cover on this topic. We need to talk about the differences between the original Japanese masters, the TMS International version, and the 4Kids version, to observe which differences were caused by which company. That will come soon too. Thank you all for being very patient. It was a journey making it, and I'm sorry it took so long, but I didn't want to leave out too many things that were essential to make the video work. With that, tune in next time as I take a look at TMS versus 4Kids. Thank you guys again, and don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And as always, have a good one.